Swing and a miss. Iowa goes after Beau Pribula and comes up empty. What's next in the transfer portal for the Hawkeyes? We break it down today. Locked on Hawkeye.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts. You can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Simple as that. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Well, it comes and goes. The transfer portal giveth and it taketh away. And the frustration certainly starting to build in Hawkeye Nation. Glad to be back with you once again this week. Last week, very sick, in the hospital a couple of different times. We're back at it, going to be with you each and every day. We're going to be playing some catch up here. Missed so much of the portal activity, and I guess in a way it's good news because Iowa's come up empty. Outside of Hank Brown, the commitment that they got, a developmental quarterback, 3 years of eligibility remaining. It has not gone very well for the Hawkeyes, and we begin the conversation today with Beau Pribula. So if you watch Beau Pribula in the backup role behind Drew Aller at Penn State this season, you saw a guy that was incredibly athletic, a guy that could move, a guy that could make plays with his legs, and in fact, Penn State used him just that as they maintained their spot in the college football playoff with their win against SMU. He was going to be a part of it until he decided to enter the portal, and Aller coming back for another season. So Iowa gets involved right away. And then you hear Missouri, and here comes Ole Miss, and here comes Indiana with Mark Cuban's money. And you're kind of left thinking, at least I was, well, I was not going to pull out of this. Then on Sunday afternoon, looked like it was down to 2, Iowa, Missouri. And the reports out there from On3 and a couple other places that that's what it was. It was down to 2, Iowa, Missouri. And eventually, Pribula chooses to go to Missouri. Okay, fine. The first avenue that we almost all go, well, Iowa just didn't have the money, right? I mean, you've heard this how many times now in this new era? Iowa didn't have the money to compete. Talking to some people, it wasn't a huge difference in terms of the financials. What Iowa's working their way through right now is a continued reluctance from people to put their belief that this thing is changing. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about offensive line or wide receiver or the quarterback position. There has to be truth of concept here for these portal guys. These guys that have maybe 1 year left or a couple years left, that yes, this offense is changing. Caleb Johnson had an incredible year. The Iowa run offense was very good this season, but the pass offense, again, stunk. And you can blame the quarterback. You can blame the lack of wide receivers, but there has to be something that these players, when they're down to the end of their eligibility, that they can look at and say, yes, I can get to the next level here. Yes, I can have a successful season here. And until that happens, until that's put together, we're going to be going down these same avenues. We're going to be left with the same questions about the way that they're built, the way that they have been put together, and we're going to have many of the same Iowa finishing second and third in terms of the portal. That's where we are. Iowa is left with a lot of questions. And as we get deeper and deeper into this process, remember, the portal's closing very quick. We're going to have more names that are going to enter after bowl games finish up. And we saw last weekend 2 more teams knocked out of the FCS playoffs, and that's another direction we very well could be looking. We'll get to that momentarily. But it's up to Tim Lester and Kirk Ferentz to figure out how you're going to be able to sell this to guys like Beau Pribula, like the wide receivers that they're after, like the offensive linemen that they're after. How do you sell a pass offense that once again this year was bad? It's not easy. It's not an easy sell. And when you have other options out there, options that financially are right there, options that give you an opportunity to play in one of the Power 2 conferences, it's a very difficult sell for Iowa. So Pribula's off the board. Hank Brown, as we've talked about, more likely, yes, he's going to compete for the job. He's going to have an opportunity to compete with Brendan Sullivan and Jackson Stratton for the starting job next year. But the way that it looks right now, I believe that at quarterback, Iowa believes that they're going to go into next year with Sullivan and Brown fighting for the job. Stratton likely is the number 3, and you're in good shape. And then you got the young guy and the other Sullivan, Jimmy Sullivan, coming in from Indiana. So that's what you have next season. But if I was going to have another successful year, we talked about how difficult the schedule is next year. If they're going to have another successful season next year, being winning 7-8 games, top half of the conference, something like that, Brendan Sullivan's not enough. Hank Brown's not enough. That they need a difference maker at the quarterback spot. And they believe that Beau Pribula was that guy. Now, one other thing I do want to point out, one other thing that I heard from a couple of different people, is there was some, let's just say, concerns by some people in Iowa football when the visit for Pribula came. They liked him. They liked his demeanor. They liked his leadership skills. But there is this lingering concern in the football offices of the way they were burned by Cade McNamara and how, in a way, they didn't have the full story with him. In a way, they were duped. I think there's a lot of people that have those thoughts about Cade McNamara, and they don't want a repeat of that. And when Pribula also had his agent, who apparently might have not been the easiest guy to get along with, that also might have at least had Iowa say, we need to have some parameters here. We cannot fall victim to another Cade McNamara situation. Who knows the validity of that, but those are some rumblings that I have been told from over there. Doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, no. Because Iowa eventually, this is not sour grapes, so they didn't want him, because they did. Even with maybe a shady agent, maybe with the guy that left some queasy feelings over there, Iowa still wanted Beau Pribula. So that's not what this is. Didn't want him? No, that's not what this is at all. But this is the environment that we're a part of. Now, Iowa goes into the third week of the transfer portal being open with one commitment. That's it. And we talked about they need depth of defensive tackle, likely a left tackle, wide receivers, multiple, maybe a linebacker, maybe a cornerback. And you have right now a guy that is not a guaranteed starter at quarterback. And that's it. Don't want to say panic, but we might be getting pretty close. We'll talk more about this, but let's talk about some more positive things. How about the weekend that was in basketball? We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we get into the weekend that was for the Hawkeyes. Iowa goes on the road to a neutral court and gets a victory. That wasn't very neutral. How about the Hawkeye fans over on Western side showing up in a big-time way up in Sioux Falls? We'll talk about that. And the Iowa women get a much-needed win as they continue in the top 25 with a victory against that UNI program that had some nice wins already this season. We'll talk about the weekend that was for Iowa hoops, plus still what's more to come in the transfer portal. A lot going on as we continue. This is Locked On Hawkeyes. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or you're paying for twice? Well, that's happened for me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app's premium features. For me, one of the best features is that subscription tracker. I canceled services I wasn't using anymore. I had a couple of old ones I had completely forgot about and saved a ton. No more stressing about that anymore with your budget every single month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Trent kind of back with you once again on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Let's get into a little basketball over the weekend. The Iowa men get a much-needed victory as they're able to dispatch Utah, a Utah team that is going to be a bubble type of team, I believe, this year. You saw the Matson kids from just up the road, up in Rochester, Minnesota. They were making some plays and making some shots, banked in threes all over the place. And, as Iowa saw that lead dissipate and the beginning of the second half, in a way, it felt over. You're kind of left wondering if I was going to be able to get off the mat. But credit to the crowd that was there in Sioux Falls. Just an incredible job. So if you haven't been to the Pentagon before, it's a really cool venue. It's small, compact. They got a lot of old school features to it. Of course, you can see the painting on the hardwood there, but the old school clock, the way the building is, it's just a really cool venue. I was there when they played Colorado a couple of years back. Really enjoyed it and saw it again. And big picture we're going to get to in a moment. Let's get back into the game, though. Josh Dix, outstanding again. And when we look at Josh Dix, it's the same conversation now we've been having for the last 3 seasons. It's not a talent issue, right? Josh Dix is a really talented guy. It's just that confidence. It's just getting him going and getting him being more aggressive. Now, if he had the same aggressiveness that Peyton Sanford has, well, we'd really be cooking with something here. Need to get that going for him all the time. You need to have that Josh Dix because the talent, no doubt about it. He's a good athlete. He's a good defender. Handles are a little bit shaky at times, but because of that athleticism, he gets away with it. So you have that component. Peyton Sanford, I thought, played about as well as he has in a really long time. He was not as aggressive at times and not forcing shots. And we've just seen that too much from Peyton when he was struggling with the shot earlier this season. We know he's a streaky shooter. We know that there's times that he really struggles with the shot. But what we've seen the last couple of times out, having that big performance against New Orleans. Yeah, New Orleans stinks. That's okay, though. Hitting 3 out of 4 in that game from behind the arc, I think that was something that was needed. Just getting his confidence going a little bit more and playing within himself. I think that's a big thing you're always looking for from Peyton Sanford. Also got to mention the play of Drew Thelwell. And where would this Iowa team be without him? Down the stretch, hitting free throws. Both of his three-pointers were just at huge times in the game. You could tell the love that he has playing for the Hawkeyes. And yeah, he's just a one-year guy coming in from Morehead State. But Drew Thelwell, there's something about him that gives you hope, right? That gives you hope that this team can be a little bit different. There can be more there. We know he's a defender on the outside. He can make plays out there. We talked about Brock Harding being better on the defensive end, I think, than anybody could have. Still at times a little bit, there's just those moments where Harding gets going a little bit too fast. But back to Owen Freeman. Owen Freeman, the best player on the team. Owen Freeman's got to stay on the floor. Battling foul trouble again. And the way that they hedge things, I'm at the point now where I just want to see Iowa defensively instead of that hard hedge. And that hard hedge where you get your big guy coming out 25, 30 feet away. Just go drop coverage. And if teams are hitting 3-pointers over top of you, and if teams are hitting 23, 25 footers, you just chalk it up and say, okay. Because the hard hedge with Owen Freeman and the aggressive style that he plays, it just doesn't translate. He's too important to this team. The backup options at the 5 are just not there. And because of that, do something defensively. When it's Owen Freeman involved, enough of the hard hedge, come back, play drop coverage, and do it every single time. Because Iowa switches things up. And sometimes they hedge hard. And sometimes it's that soft hedge. And other times it's drop coverage. And it doesn't matter. It feels like they screw it up anytime that they're doing it. I know that's watching basketball, right? And watching your team and you get frustrated there, but just got to find a way to keep them out there. That would be, I guess, the button that I'd be pushing and just go and drop coverage all the time with Owen Freeman and see if that's something that can keep them out there a little bit more. Price, good game out of him, knocked down a couple of 3-pointers, doing his thing. And we continue to see Laje Dembele finally playing at the level I think a lot of people thought he was going to this year. Knocked down a 3-pointer, a couple of rebounds in there, helping out inside when Freeman was dealing with foul trouble. These are what you need from Laje Dembele. Is he going to be a star? No. But can he be a competent big? Can he do enough little things to help you out? Definitely have that. Cooper didn't get much in his return, back a couple of games now. Going to need more out of him. But overall, playing the game as they did without Seydou Traore. And that's another conversation. What's going on here? So we go back to last week, and again, with my illness, didn't have a chance to talk about this. But there was a press conference before the game against Utah. the question was asked to Fran, what's going on here? Is he hurt? Did he have a regression? I guess it was just odd. And I don't have the exact phrasing that was used. It was so weird because it was weird for a couple of reasons. The first is because Fran McCaffrey, he always sticks up for his guys, right? He comes up with these comparisons to players that are way out of left field. Fran loves his guys. And you wonder what's Traore now. Is it the simple old term that we hear? Are you hurt or are you injured? Now, they want him to battle through it a little bit more and to continue to push forward on that front. Seydou Traore is a tremendous athlete. He's incredibly important. And if this team is going to be different than a team that can just make the tournament, maybe win a game and that's it. But if the upside is there, I believe that Seydou Traore is going to have to be a big part of that. As is Drew Thelwell, as is Josh Dix. And all these guys are going to have to step up to make that happen. But I think Traore is as important of hitting that upside of anybody. Something to keep an eye on. This week, it's a matchup next week on Monday, they take on New Hampshire. So 9 days off before that matchup, before a week from Friday, January 3rd, when things start up again in the Big Ten against Wisconsin. And that one is a monster. Wisconsin, then home for 2, Nebraska and Indiana. Iowa needs to get off to a good start. Have to do it. They got one win in the first 2 games, got that win against Northwestern, followed up by the tough loss against Michigan. It needs to continue. And I believe at minimum that means going 2-1 in that stretch because the schedule is incredibly daunting after that. And then at the end of the schedule, when you play 3 of your last 4 on the road and the only home game is against Michigan State, yeah, that's going to be a problem. Ken Pomeroy, in fact, Iowa down the stretch has the Hawkeyes finishing 1-6 at Maryland, L. Home for Oregon, L. Home win against Washington, and then losses against Illinois, Northwestern, Michigan State, and Nebraska on the road. Have to get victories early on. We'll see if Traore is going to be ready to go. He should be. We're still talking about an ankle sprain, but certainly an interesting one on that front. Let's jump over to women's basketball after Iowa gets the win against UNI on Friday night as the Iowa women pull away and get the victory. Before that, some really sad news from over the weekend, and that is the passing of the color commentator from the Hawkeye Radio Network, Jamie Cavey Lang. I remember her as a player probably as Jamie Cavey. As somebody like myself that has followed women's basketball before Caitlin, before Megan for a long time, Jamie was a beloved figure in that program early in the Jan Jensen, Lisa Bluter era. Just a try-hard player, local kid that did well. A lot of great people had so many great things to say about her. And hearing her on the broadcast before she had to step away with her health concerns, the joy, the enthusiasm, the love that she had for Iowa women's basketball was incredible. Passed away Saturday at the age of 41, and certainly thoughts, prayers, condolences to the family. And around this time on top of it, just absolutely incredibly difficult. And I wanted to mention that before we get into the game on that front. But back to the game. And it's very difficult to transition back into basketball when you have something that big doing. So we're just going to dive back in. 92-86. One of the biggest takeaways here is, again, you got to shout out Maya McDermott. What a stud. I watched her so much in Johnston. So if you don't know, I call high school basketball, call high school sports here in Central Iowa. So all the girls from the CIML, the guys from the CIML, watched them play a lot throughout the course of their careers. And you could tell she was small, but she was going to be good, and she absolutely has. She finishes with 30, what she did earlier this year against Iowa State, and the upset win that they had there was great. But Iowa just able to keep them at arm's reach the whole game through. The turnovers down to 12, need that. Still 4 out of Lucy Olson. You want to see that number maybe cut in half. Still 7 assists to go along with it. What I'd love to see, though, was the passing of Hannah Stolke, and that really showed up in a big-time way. She wasn't overly aggressive. O'Grady was a monster inside, and you need to consistently see that out of her. But Hannah Stolke getting fouls on her, but just being patient. And that's the thing with Hannah Stolke. She's a better athlete 9 times out of every 10 matchups that she has on the floor, right? She's an incredible athlete. Just let the game slow down. And just there's so many times where that isn't the case. Kylie Feuerbach struggled again, but McCabe got going. And that's something we haven't seen a ton. I thought that this was going to be a coming out season for Taylor McCabe, that she was going to have this kind of year all year long, and it just quite hasn't happened at that level. Good to see her going. And on top of it, being rewarded with some more minutes. She finishes with 29 minutes, and I believe that was a high this season, certainly a high over the last month or so, as she hasn't been out there nearly as much. So I would get some win against UNI on Friday. For them, though, it's really a look forward. And a look forward after dropping the game against Michigan State next week. They get the home opener against Purdue coming up on the 29th. So we'll get that one next Sunday. And then at Penn State, Maryland after that. That should be a huge matchup coming up on January 5th. The Big Ten this year, not great. Let's just say that. And not a great Big Ten this season. Looking at some of the numbers as we bring up the net rankings here for you. Doing this a little bit on the fly. There we go. No, we do not want last year's net rankings. We want 2024-25 as we bring them up and take a look at the Big Ten. So Iowa currently a little bit further down. They're 30th in the net rankings as of today. But in the Big Ten, you have your top teams. Here we go. UCLA, really good. USC, the newcomers. But of the Big Ten that we think about, Ohio State, undefeated, haven't played exactly a gauntlet to this point. Michigan State's at number 13, then Maryland at 22, Michigan at 23, Iowa at 30, and Nebraska at 35. Then there's a pretty big gap after that. You got Minnesota off there, off to a good start. They lost their only game. But the bottom rung, the Rutgers, the Northwesterns, the Purdues of the world, how much is that going to impact the Big Ten this season in terms of kind of the record? And when you're looking at a conference strength this season, I think that's going to be a big one to keep an eye on as we look at the way that it's set up and the way that the RPI looks on top of it in the Big Ten, and the net ranking is really what we should say, because the net conference rankings currently have the SEC number 1, but the Big Ten is at number 2 ahead of the ACC, and the Big 12 comes in at number 4. So that's where we are. Look, 8, 9, 10, maybe 11 teams from the Big Ten are probably going to be in the NCAA tournament with these new super conferences. That's something we have to wrap our minds around also, the way that it looks and the number of teams that are going to get in this season. It's going to be a different look. It's going to be a different feel this year. That's going to be a component. Iowa's still looking for their first quad 1 victory on the women's side, and they're going to be right there, though, certainly back in the tournament. So that is just a quick look around basketball, and we're continuing to struggle a little bit with the cough here, so if you hear some pauses in there, that's what we're doing, coming off the illness from a week ago. One final topic here, and that is getting back into the portal. What are some of the other names that we need to be keeping an eye on for football portaling? We'll do that when we come back. Locked On Hawkeyes. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players are going to score a touchdown, how many points each team will score, over, under on that. Oh, it's absolutely great. Taking a look at maybe the Packers and the Saints this evening. Simple as that. More or less, you don't think the Saints are going to score? You can bet on that avenue too on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance to win $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook of the NFL. Trent kind of back with you one final time. Locked On Hawkeyes. All right, let's get into a couple of things here. Let's start at the wide receiver position as we look at some more portal targets. Sam Phillips took a visit over the weekend to Iowa. Sounds like it's down to 3 for him, according to On3. Iowa, Virginia Tech, and Memphis, the final 3 there. This is a speed component. Iowa needs speed at the wide receiver position. They got big bodies and did relatively well. Need to get that one. So that's a big one that Iowa's going to be looking at. Sam Phillips out of the portal. And we'll see. 5'9", 185 pounds. And some other big offers as well. Iowa needs wide receivers. All right. What else is out there? One name that we talked about a lot a couple weeks ago, Jonah Pace. Iowa took a visit to Iowa right away. We're in the top defensive linemen, defensive tackles in the portal, according to Pro Football Focus. Still has not made a decision. Still has not made anything that translates to ready to go, anything like that. But Iowa feels like they're in pretty good shape. It's at the point now where we're just waiting, right, to get some good news, getting some positivity, and they're not getting it at this point. There's going to be no more names that emerge, and one other name that I have to throw out there is Gronowski, the quarterback from South Dakota State. So if you follow FCS football, and I do a little bit, you and I being down last couple of years has maybe slowed down, and just the domination that we've seen out of the Dakota schools here recently. But Gronowski's been a starter now the last couple of years there. This season, 61% completion percentage, 2,700 yards, 23 touchdowns against 7 interceptions. He is a guy, big-time athlete. He's a big dude, 6'3", 230 pounds. He can run. There is movement to his game. This is not a statuesque quarterback. Now, he hasn't even entered the portal. His season just ended this weekend, losing a heartbreaker against North Dakota State. But that is a player I think that would make a lot of sense. Tim Lester recruited him out of high school. Iowa recruited him out of high school, didn't eventually offer. Maybe that's a good thing, looking at the way that they offered in the past, though, the way things have gone with the way that they were looking at quarterbacks before. Got to take a sip, sorry. Still getting over the cold. Gronowski, though, that's a name to look for. There's going to be more quarterbacks out there. Look, this isn't over. And Iowa was able to find a whole lot, right? Iowa was able to find last year Brennan Sullivan and Jackson Stratton. This thing isn't over. It's not about funds. It's not that Iowa is poor compared to everybody else. Could they use more money? Absolutely. But they went shopping. They went big game hunting. And now they're empty. You got to work quickly, though. As the portal season is going to come to an end here very quickly, Iowa's got work to do. We'll keep an eye on it, as we always do here. Locked On Hawkeyes, your team every day, and we will be with you every day. Coming up tomorrow, it's Christmas Eve and a wish list. We're going to go Christmas shopping. What are we looking for in the portal? We'll talk about that and a whole lot more. It is a busy week with Christmas here, but we got you covered. Your team every day. We'll have some fun. We'll do some goofy things, and we got you covered all fronts with Hawkeye Sports. Thanks for being with us, and thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Don't forget Locked On Big Ten. We got you covered over there. Craig Sheeman taking a look at everything happening. Of course, the bowl game coming up. We are a week away from that one. We will continue to break things down and get deeper into the matchup against Missouri. And we got you covered on all fronts. Maybe you're an NFL fan, NBA, MLB. Locked On, your favorite team each and every day. Of course, we're with you on the Hawkeye front. Locked On Big Ten. Locked On Betting. Locked On Fantasy Football. Maybe you're coming down to the wire and looking for a championship next week in your fantasy football league. They got you covered over there. Your team every day on the Locked On Network. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow, and go Hawks.